Hello, I am John Najarian, and Rebelcon 2022 is almost here. We do have a virtual pass. The virtual pass gives you full access to everything, all the streams, the live trading sessions, all of our fabulous keynote speakers. So to learn more about what's going on at Rebelcon 2022, whether you're in person or virtual, check out marketrebellion.com/Dallas.
Good morning on this Wednesday morning. Yes, it is hump day, and we need that because I'll tell you what, it was really something yesterday. As a matter of fact, you can look at those CPI numbers, immediate reaction to the markets. The markets were absolutely getting pummeled from start to finish, but it really was at the start. In that first hour or so, we were already down 700 points on the Dow. We were down 400 points on the NASDAQ. And then in that final 2.5 hours, after just kind of floating around in that area for quite a while, final 2.5 hours, wow, we went another leg further down to finish down 1,200 points on the Dow, 4% move, to finish down 630 points on the NASDAQ for a 5% move to the downside. Absolutely getting hammered across the board. We talked about how volatility had been holding up even last Friday and into the first day of the week on Monday. Volatility was not going anywhere, and now it's been going up and up and up, and it's starting to really increase. Matter of fact, you look at that volatility index, it was trading right around 2730, near that area, and you look over at that VXN, the volatility of the NASDAQ, wow, we're back up into that 33 range with crude trading right around 87.5. You had nat gas kind of recovering somewhat to get a little bit closer to 8.5. It was about 840 yesterday. But the dramatic moves really came from the 2-year and the 10-year. The 2-year yesterday, about 377. You look over at that 10-year, a 342 on monster volumes. The option volumes yesterday jumped again, understandably so, up near that 44.5 million mark. So incredibly active day with the derivative sides of things. You look at volatility as that was sort of pumping into the markets. How about the sectors themselves? Every single sector was red. That's not a shocker. But what if I told you every single sector was down 2.5% or more? That's the kind of day we had yesterday. We had the communications area. That was down over 5.5% yesterday, led by Snap, which was down about 7%. You look at technology down close to 5.5%. Apple, another monstrous move for Apple. It was down 6% yesterday. I look over at consumer discretionary. I look at down 5.25%. I look at Tesla down over 4% yesterday as well. Caterpillar down about 4% for the industrials. I look over at the financials. Wells Fargo down about 5% as those financials were down close to a 4% mark as well. Just gives you a little idea. It was a bloodbath, and it covered everything and everything getting sold. Now, to find something in the green, something in positive territory, what did we find? Well, believe it or not, you had Twitter in positive territory. We also had CF and Mosaic, those ag names that had been getting hammered. Now seems like that's the place to go for a little bit of safety. But then you look over and what else was getting hit pretty hard yesterday? Those semiconductors across the board. AMD, NVIDIA was down 9%. AMD was getting hit. NXPI, Micron, Intel. A look at a Western Dig down 9% as well. Over to Meta, that was getting hammered pretty good. Amazon, Datadog, you get the idea. Across the board, everything getting sold off. So what did it look like going into the start of today? Well, we had a little bit of a move to the upside, but boy, it was a meager move to the upside. Matter of fact, in the pre-market, I was looking at the Dow up about 60, 65 points. Not much of a bounce off to a 1,200-point move to the downside yesterday. NASDAQ up about 40 points. Also, not a real big recovery after a 600-plus move to the downside yesterday. 5% move to the downside yesterday. And as we were getting into the day, we started to see a little bit of movement more to the upside. We got up there. We were up about 90 points on the Dow. We were up about 40 points still on the NASDAQ as we moved in. And then in a flash, the final 15 minutes before coming on here, in that first 45 minutes, we were moving to the upside. We were up about 60 points on the Dow. By the time we walked in and I put the positions on and I was looking around for things, we were down 100 points on the Dow. We were down about 15 points on the NASDAQ. That was in the final 15 minutes of this first hour. That's really a big flip from where we were in that positive territory. And we'll see if we actually, this is only the first hour of trade, a monstrous day yesterday. People still trying to figure out things, still trying to find that comfort level and listen to all of the crazy characters on radio and TV and telling them all the different reasons. We can tell you the reasons. We had that big, huge CPI number yesterday that immediately moved over. The 10-year and the 2-year started flying to the upside. And off of that, obviously, the read through the lines, between the lines of what the Fed most likely will do, even a little bit out there about a 1% move. We'll see. We'll see. Time will tell. But in any event, 2-year up there at about 3.79. I'm looking at a 10-year that's trading right around a 3.42. So still holding up pretty strong there. You've got the VXN still around that 33 level. We look at the volatility index. It had gotten near and underneath 27. That's going up once again. Yesterday, it actually popped over 28 early on. You've got crude over 88 early, and nat gas, another little step further to the upside, trading around 860. A pretty good bounce off of that $8 level not too many days ago. Yes, I said days ago. I look at Bitcoin down 5% today, holding on, if it can, to that 20,000 level. And then you look over at some of the sectors. They completely are just shifting around. Now, crude actually remains, and energy remains in positive territory. That was starting off strong. It's still up about a couple of percent. Materials slipped. They slipped a little bit further down, about 1.5%. Communications slipped as well. I look at the financials turning around. They were up about 0.25%. They were down 1% as we got into the end of the first hour of trade. Some of the big newsy items of the day. How about Starbucks? Now, I'm going to go back to the Rebel's Edge on Monday when John and I were going through our unusual. Each one of us do one. We've got the 4 categories before that. Then we do the unusual, each one of us doing one of each. Then we get into the sports. My unusual on Monday was Starbucks. Starbucks was trading about 89.50. We had 14,000 of the October 92.5 calls getting purchased. Today, that stock is up 6%, over 93. Those calls they were buying that were decently out of the money are now in the money. Gives you a little perspective on some of that unusual option activity. I hear people, there are 2 statements that I find to be absolutely not only offensive, but idiotic. That's pretty aggressive, I know. But the people who say the volatility index doesn't mean anything, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. And that there is no such thing as unusual options, again, makes no sense whatsoever. Stood in the trading pits for many, many years. I can tell you there is indications that start on the derivative side that eventually start to move things on the actual stock side. And it's amazing how often the smart money really is in the markets themselves. Just a little side note on those 2 items. You also have Nucor today going in the opposite direction. That's getting hammered pretty good. They're talking about some of the reduced volumes. They're also talking about margin contraction. So when you look at their guidance, very, very disappointing. That stock getting hammered pretty decent today. What's going up today? Well, Moderna having a pretty good start to the day, up about 5%. We talked about Starbucks. It was up 5 or 6%. I look at the beta names and energy. They're having a pretty good start to the day. Names like Marathon, names like EOG, also Chevron. I'm looking at Merck and J&J with a nice start to the day along with Moderna. Still under pressure, though. You look over at something. We know what the Nucor numbers were. We talked about materials starting to melt down just a little bit. Freeport Mac being one of those names. On the transportation side, how about a UNP and a CSX getting hit just a little bit today? So you get a bit of an overview of what we're really seeing early on. I've got one unusual for you. I'll tell you what. Very thin today, very, very thin today. Early on, the markets were fairly flat. We weren't seeing a whole lot of unusual, at least early on, but this one stood out for me just a little bit. SWBI, Smith & Wesson. We're talking about, obviously, what guns. We're talking about all the different aspects of that whole field. 18,000 of the October 12.5 calls getting bought. Stock was trading right around 1160, 18,000, decent sized paper there of the October 12.5 calls, 30 cents up to about 45 cents for those calls. Pretty aggressive. We started off very light. We have just a couple of unusuals early, but that one definitely stood out because we don't see that name very often. And 18,000, that's a decent number as well. Folks, I'll tell you what, if you don't understand what we're talking about in the derivatives markets, educate yourself. You need to get educated because that is where leverage can work for you, not necessarily against you, but actually work for you in a lot of different ways. And there's a million different ways that you can look at things in the derivatives markets and come away with some very, very good information. But you've got to have that educational side as well. Folks, have a great day of trading. We'll see you tomorrow.